little challenges of that pesky blind thing. I showed up recently at a event at the New York School of Medicine, and they're like, I said, it's okay, I'm blind. She's like, but I didn't know. I said, it wasn't relevant to why you brought me here. You know? Hello, this is amazing. It's great to be a part of the first annual of anything. I want to share that. Thank you so much for being here. Before I get started, if y'all don't mind, I want to take a moment of silence, if we may, for individuals that are out there today. They're trapped in lives of prostitution, for individuals that are being trafficked right now, and for those men, boys, women, and girls that will die today alone. It's serious stuff. Dear Father, I just want to ask you, please, to, people tell me all the time to looking forward to hearing what you say. I always say, I'm looking forward to hearing what I got to say too. So, God, please give me your words and not mine. And allow the people here to hear the message that you want them to hear today. So, thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, here we go. Can somebody ding, ding, ding at 30 minutes so I know I have about 15 minutes left? Who wants to be my ding, ding, dinger? Can somebody do that? I can't watch the clock. Okay, 30 minutes, just a simple ding. I'm a smart blind girl, so. Okay, talk quick. Okay, it's chilly here in Springfield. Just saying, I wasn't ready for that. Okay, so I'm going to share little bits and pieces of my story. Do we know if we were going to use any of the PowerPoints that I sent? If not, I'll just verbally explain them. Yes, no, maybe? Okay, that's fine. I might be asking you to take out a pen and paper. The blind girl don't like to play with PowerPoints no how. That's a side of people thing. Okay, so I grew up in a small community. I moved around a lot. I can't say I grew up in a small community. I moved around a lot. A lot of dysfunction, a lot of poverty. And I'm not going to get caught up in a whole bunch of the backstory, just because I like to be honorable to everybody. So I came from some dysfunction, and we won't go into a lot of detail there. There was some mental illness in my family. There was substance abuse in my family. There was sexual abuse in my family. There was psychological abuse in my family. There was physical abuse. You get the picture. I got into drugs, and I got into self-harm. Self-harm was kind of how I dealt with all my junk. Self-harm, I was a cutter. It's how I dealt with my emotional pain. I recently learned at a national conference about how the brainstem gets kicked in when you're stuck in a whole bunch of trauma, and people do self-harm because it re-engages the brainstem. See, I didn't know that. I went to a lot of counseling to get through that. They never told me that. That just makes a lot of sense to me. I guess I'm a practical kind of girl. I wear practical shoes. Anyway, so I was a cutter. I got into drugs. I used to get into my mom's medicine cabinet, and anything I saw that had little half eyelids, I would take them because that's how I coped with my home life. It was like we had this deep, heavy, dark cloud of evil lurking over wherever we were. I didn't go to school much. I didn't fit in. I was kind of ugly. I was kind of dorky. Wasn't real smart. I was actually told by my mother that I was stupid and mentally retarded, and I was never going to be able to do anything, so why bother? I really internalized that. We have a tendency to, us as grown people, our words, we see our adults in our lives as gods, if you will. So we really internalize a lot of that stuff, and we need to think about the labels that we're utilizing when communicating with each other as well as children and the people that we serve. I ran away a bunch, and they just kept kind of sending me home. I want to say, I was marked as like this delinquent juvenile because I kept running away, but usually most kids want some kind of stability. They ain't just trying to run away. Most kids, majority, not just kids that want to run away all the time. There are those, don't get me wrong. But sometimes it's we're needing to do that relational thing and figure out what's really going on because, after about the 7th or 8th time, maybe there's something we're missing, right? Children don't always talk about ugliness at home because you know why? It's our family. We want them to love us. I'm really loud, ain't I? Sorry about that. It's one of those things God gave me. Quiet kid, loud grown up. He dusts us off and cleans us up, and we get all kinds of new traits. I guess mine was just loud. A lot of victims don't self-identify. Lots of times, individuals will find we're victimized by family members in the beginning or someone close to them. And we're taught that. I ran away a bunch of times. I was in this group home in Oklahoma City, and we had this. I was in this group home. It was really funny. I'd been there a few times. I was there with a girl that I knew, and her name was Pam. She was really cool. And so we had been in other situations together. So of course we hooked up, instant friends. So we were these really bad delinquents. We used to sneak out at night and hustle money. Our idea of hustling money, because we were on the streets and it was survival. Both of us were running away from some pretty ugly stuff. But we learned this quick little hustle from a couple other girls that had been on the streets. They were older than us, and it was you'd get in a car with the guy who was trying to pay for sexual activity from a girl, and then when they were undoing their britches to get their wallet, you would steal their wallet, pull the cash out, toss the wallet, and run, because we were young and they were old. That's what we did. We weren't engaging in sexual activity. But we were doing that at night. We'd take turns at this center. It was connected to the children's hospital in Oklahoma City, where they were housing us. They put you in protective custody while you see a judge and decide they're going to send you home. And we would take turns every couple of nights going out, hustle $20 or $30 and come back in. And what we would do during the day is give it to the little girls that were younger than us and let them buy caffeine and chocolate and candy and sugar and get spun out on caffeine and sugar and make the guards crazy. And sit back and watch. We were pretty bad kids. One night, Pam didn't make it back in time for count. The guard came in and turned the lights on and told me to get up and get dressed. I got dressed. I'm like, yeah, what's going on? I figured, she was going to ask me about Pam. I wasn't sure. We're walking across the catwalk. I'm like, what are we doing? Where are we going? I'm looking down because I'm 15. I'm distracted easy. I probably have a little ADD in me. Self-diagnosed, of course. I was looking down at the little cars, like, whoa, look at those little big headlights. They look so little. It was in the middle of the night. And she's like saying, come on. And we go into the hospital, and we get on the elevator, and we go down. And Pam was there. She had gotten in a car with a man. She had attempted to take his cash, and he caught her by her hair. And he raped her, and he beat her. And he left her in an alley after he had picked up a piece of broken glass from a mason jar and severed her arteries and left her to bleed out. I was 15 years old. That'll change you. I realized then that I wasn't going to get real close to folks because she was probably the closest person I was throughout my whole little journey of life. When you go through some stuff, you have a bond with people that's not the same. I ran away again. I got sent back home and I ran away again. This would be my last time I'd run away. I ran away. I ended up in a big city. I decided I couldn't be friends with anybody because I couldn't be hurt. Couldn't trust something bad wouldn't happen to me or them. A guy befriended me, and I'm going to skip some of the parts of this because I have a book back there, a little shameless self-promotion. I have a book back there that's going to tell a lot. If you come back there and buy the book, you can read some of the stuff. So I'll hit a few points and then skip on through, but you can read more of my story in my book. It's in the back, and portions of that go to the organization that I work for. Anyway, I hope that was okay. Shameless, but okay. As a runaway, I was like, I knew I couldn't go to the homeless shelters because, a woman, they feel kind of vulnerable there. Or they ask too many questions, and all I wanted was to not have to go home. That's all I wanted. How do I go on with life? I felt that being on the streets was better than being home. So, I was walking. I'd been in an abandoned house for a number of days. And no food, no water. It was in the winter. No way to change clothes, no way to take a shower. And I was hungry. I met a guy. He pulled up beside me. I got in the car. And again, I'm skipping through part of my story, but I want to talk about this specific story to see how things can be kind of weird. This guy offered me a ride, and I got in the car, and he's like, "Hey, you need a ride?" And I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "I'm looking for work." He's like, "You looking for work?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're in luck." I was like, "Huh?" So he asked me my name. I said it was Stacy Carr. Stacy, because everywhere I went in school, because I went to like 22 different schools by the time I was in 7th grade, Stacy was always that popular, cute girl. I was not. I was that weird, awkward kid. In fact, in school, kids would say that if you looked at me, you'd turn to stone, and they called me Madame Medusa, and they would walk along the walls and be real still when I'd walk down. Kids can be mean. And Carr, because I was in a car, and I was 15 and couldn't think of nothing more creative. I was Stacy Carr. I was 19, and I was looking for work. Well, he said I was in luck because he had a company, and he was looking for some help. I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I can pay you cash for a few days. We'll see what happens there, right?" Okay, let's check this out. He's like, "Then where are you staying?" I'm like, "Over yonder." I wasn't going to say I stayed in a abandoned house, done broke in the back window, sneaky in a old empty house. And he offered me a place to stay. I went to his house and I stayed, and he was a real nice guy. That's what I want to say. This man was a real nice guy. Kind of became my safe person. He gave me a job. I had a nifty little job. My job was to go into honky-tonks. Honky-tonks kind of appropriate with an accent like mine. And say, "Excuse me, sir, would you like to buy the lady a flower?" That's all I had to do. I'd go into little bars and say, "Would you like to buy the lady a flower?" That's all I had to do. I'd make some little money. I'd come back. He'd be waiting in the parking lot. I'd give him the money. I'd go back to his house. There'd be food. And I'd been involved in alcohol and drugs. That was my scapegoat. My mom, she had her issues, and I messed up kid. I had friends that did drugs. There were drugs and alcohol available. But he never was inappropriate to me. He never dug me for information. After a few weeks, he really became my safe person. After a couple months, he asked me to come in the living room. He had a gift for me. I opened the envelope. I'm like, "Wow, this is cool." I had my own room. This guy never tried to touch me. Nothing. It was awesome. 15-year-old runaway trying to stay away from it was a dream come true, right? I got this secret. I'd be pulling this over on him. In that envelope was a picture ID. It had my picture on it. It said my name was Stacy Carr, and I was 19 years old. And with that card came a promotion. I was going to use this card and go into strip clubs now because I got a promotion. I was going to ask for a specific person. I was going to show them that ID, and I was going to sell trinkets to the guys that were tipping the women on stage. I was being groomed. I got my first brand new pair of shoes. I had somebody tell me I was beautiful for the first time in my life. I had food to eat every day for the first time in my life. This man has called himself Rocky, and I'm pretty sure his name wasn't Rocky, just like I wasn't Stacy Carr. Said, "We going to lunch. I'm going to introduce you to my brother." Pretty sure it wasn't his brother. Just want to say that. Went to a Western Sizzle and I ordered chopped steak with cheese and onions and peppers. It was really good. It's funny when something really changes your life, you even remember what you ate that day. He introduced me to his brother, real nice guy. He told me he was going to be out of town. Rocky told me, he says, "I've been with him a couple of months now." He said, "I'm going to be out of town for a while, and you're going to stay with my brother, and he's going to take real good care of you." I trusted him. He'd become my safe person, right? Now, I hadn't been with him to get that ID made. I didn't ask him to make it. And a 15-year-old not being super crazy smart, I was thinking I'd pull the wool over somebody's eyes. I went home with that man, And he had to test the goods. What I didn't know is those strip clubs I had been going into and asking for specific people and showing them and selling trinkets to the guys that were tipping the women on stage were owned by this very man that I was leaving this Western Sizzling with. I didn't know that then. He tested the goods. The next day, I was escorted to my new job, a 15-year-old minor working in the legalized sex industry. See, we think that stuff's okay, right? They got little back rooms, a whole lot of ugly things. I used to get transported over to Coffeyville, Kansas. It was an all-nude place on the weekends. I was escorted in and out. I was told who to talk to, and there would be men waiting in back rooms for me. I was told who to perform for, what to do, what for. Sometimes I was allowed to sleep. I was given lots of drugs, and I really don't know where the point came where the drugs became the part to cope with what had just happened, or the drugs became the part so I could cope with what was fixing to happen. Does that make sense? It gets kind of muddy there. I'm talking to the wall. Make sure I ain't talking to the wall. I talked to the wall the other day. I was at this thing, doing this thing for this international group, and I kept doing, like, I'm talking to the wall again, ain't I? And everybody giggled. I was like, I am, ain't I? I was talking to the wall. Y'all get real quiet. I forget where you are. I get distracted easy. Okay, so what happened in that, so you see how I kind of got caught up into that. So I was trafficked at 15. See how that happened? I was a vulnerable runaway. Wasn't a bad guy. But I had some vulnerabilities, right? Predators were looking for people like me. See how easy that happened? And we didn't call it trafficking then. We didn't have any words for it. Let me just tell you, they say it's the oldest profession. Prostitution's not the oldest profession. Agriculture is. Even I know that. Just want to be honest. It's one of my things. But prostitution and the exploitation of vulnerabilities, whether it's labor trafficking for the agricultural industry, even in the beginning of times, we've always had a haves and have-nots, or a exploitation of the vulnerable at some capacity. Correct? We have. It's always been kind of sucky for the poor. There's always been somebody willing to provide something with some kind of agenda for people with lack of options and resources. They say it's a modern-day slavery, but, it's been going on since the Bible. So, not very modern, right? We just put a label on it, right? Do you agree? We just put a label on it. So, eventually, a doped-out teenage girl who becomes more and more non-compliant at the vile acts, because sometimes there would be 15 or 20 men waiting for me. I was escorted in and out at the facility where I worked. I was not allowed to use a telephone, and I was never allowed to sit at a table alone without being monitored. And who was I going to call anyway? My mama? My family? No. Ooh, social services, they'd done me good justice. Right? Eventually, my non-compliance would get me a couple times locked in the closet, a couple times denied food, a couple times denied sleep. So you get a little sleep deprivation, a little food deprivation. It's a lot easier to get somebody to do what you want them to do. But eventually, I became so non-compliant, it was easier to let me go. But where was I going to go? Who was I going to call? I ended up out on the streets with an addiction, with a whole lot of trauma, a whole lot of brokenness, a whole lot of hopelessness. Now let's say hope. Everybody say hope. Hope. Say hope again. Say it louder. I know it's early. One more time. There you go. If you ain't got hope, you ain't got much. But the one thing that I've learned is the teeniest tiny glimmer of hope. Lets the light in. It don't take much. It don't take much. You know, a little analogy I like to use is like pretend there's like just a little square of glitter in the middle of the floor in a room. You don't see it, right? If you get a few of those, the light hits it just right. You see a little sparkle, right? A little glimmer of light. It don't take much to see that, catch that shiny, that glimpse, right? I'm trying to give a sighted people's analogy here from the blind lady. Sometimes that works, sometimes not so much. Hope, though, restores. I became without hope. I never had much hope. I ended out on the streets, and for 17 years, I spent homeless and addicted and as a street corner prostitute in Kansas City, Missouri. So I have a Missouri connection. St. Louis, they always say the St. Louis connection. A Kansas City connection. It's Missouri connection. Sometimes I was under pimp control, sometimes I was not. But you know, I'd get arrested. It wasn't my pimp, it was my man, it was my boyfriend. We're in a relationship. There's 4 other women working other corners on the avenue, and we got identical engagement rings. But he's my man and he loves me. I had a guy, and I didn't learn this until after I got off the streets. He had been in prison in the 80s for promoting prostitution. And I remember it was 104 degrees outside. I weighed 88 pounds. I had been up for 3 days because it didn't matter what I did, the quota never ended. And I was on my knees and I begged him for a glass of water. And he hit me and knocked me to the ground. And a guy pulled up, flashing his lights for me. And he pulled me up by my hair, and he walked me to that car. And he said, "You better get back." All I wanted was a drink of water. Too much fear to go get it in that car, you know? Fear is a powerful thing. I used to, in that journey, you know, I've been stabbed. I've been held at gunpoint to dig my own shallow grave. I was held captive, zip-tied, and walked into a basement covered in plastic. I thought I was going to die there. While this man brutally sodomized me, beat me, and raped me for days. And then he branded me with a cattle iron. And I want to explain something to you. These were things done not by my pimp, but by men purchasing sex. Now, they were paying for a blowjob. Sorry, I know I'm in a church. Okay. I should have said BJ. Sorry. Sometimes it comes out and I just have to ask for grace later. I experienced a lot of ugliness from my boyfriends, my pimps. One of my pimps is doing 27 years in federal prison. He was making $25,000 a day for 3.5 years before law enforcement finally decided to arrest him because they had to follow that. How many lives were affected? I have friends that got in cars by buyers of sex, and their bodies were washed up on the river. I have a friend that had been mutilated so bad, the only identifying mark on her was a tattoo. She had left with a guy posing as a date. I don't call him Johns, I call him Judas. We talk about the traffickers, but we just as equally have to talk about the buyers. I'm going to paint a quick picture. You might want to jot this down. Five pimps or traffickers, whichever you want to call them. They're the big bad guys, and they are heinous. They are manipulative. They are cunning. They are smart critters. Try not to use bad words again. If you got 5 pimps or traffickers, and they got 10 women each working for them, or girls, or boys, or combination of. 5 pimps or traffickers, 10 women each in their stable, because they don't even look at them as people. They can discredit that humanity by looking at them as cattle. Call it their stable. If you got 5 pimps or traffickers with 10 women each working for them, and they're turning on average 20 dates a day, and that's be it online, that's in a brothel. We call them house pimps, working out of the house, or on the streets. In a 24-hour period of time. 5 pimps, 10 women each, 20 dates in a 24-hour period. Do you realize that the total, do the math, if you got a calculator, got a smartphone, check it out for yourself. That's 1,000 men buying sex a day. It's equally as important that we address this. It is equally as important that we are putting legislation and we are bringing forth to the table when we have the opportunities. It is just as important to talk about what is perpetuating and what is keeping these guys in business. Because if we don't, they're going to keep recruiting our children. They're going to keep recruiting our homeless, vulnerable people. They're going to keep looking for those people that they have the opportunity to exploit. I've been arrested 103 times. That's nuts. I've been to prison 7. Missouri is one of 7 states in the United States that makes prostitution a felony. Now, I was trafficked as a minor. But when I turned 18, I was a criminal. Nobody ever identified me. But nobody ever asked the right questions, right? I remember law enforcement arresting me and saying, Ellie Mae was my street name. Hey, it's Ellie Mae. I should be glad when I find you in the river in a dumpster out here so I can quit wasting my time on scum like you. See, there ain't much hope, right? I used to pray. I worked this corner where there were 3 churches. And I used to pray, and I'd pray. If there is this merciful God, allow death to find me. I thought that was my only way out. I believed that. I tried to go to treatment once. I went to treatment. I spent 5 days in detox. I didn't have insurance, so they told me in 6 weeks I could come back. I didn't even know what year it was. I lived in a park. What's I gonna do? Go hang out with my pimp, my dope man, in my park for 6 weeks and come back and get clean? I'm sorry, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But before I could go into detox, so this is really funny. Now, these are the little things that I think we don't think about. In order for me to go to detox, I had to drink. Now, I did not drink because my mom was an alcoholic. I prided myself. I smoked $1,000 a day worth of dope, but I did not drink. So I had standards. I should say I earned $1,000 a day. I didn't do that much dope. That's my working quota. So I literally tried to go to detox and they told me no. I weighed 93 pounds and I had no shoes on and I was a hot mess. I had no idea what day it was, what year it was. I wasn't even sure what year it was, so I knew what my age was. So in order to go to detox, I had to take off walking, turn a date, make some money, get dropped off at the liquor store, ask the guy at the counter if I wanted to blow a BA, because the only way detox would take me is if I blew numbers. What would not taste like alcohol? Because I don't like it. Guy thought it was nuts. So I turned a date to get some money, to go to the liquor store, to buy some booze, so I could come back and get some help. That don't make sense to me. It really didn't make sense to me then, but whatever, right? So I get into detox, they tell me to come back in 6 weeks. I live in a park and had been for like 11 years. I'm gonna come back in 6 weeks, I don't even know what year it is. I did 5 days of detox, the lady heard me throwing a fist. What, are you kidding me? So I got into treatment, I got a respite bed because I didn't have insurance. About 5 days into treatment, what happened for me was all that trauma from when I was a child, all the trauma from being on the streets, it all faced me. I mean, what do you deal with? Do you deal with the drugs first? Do you deal with the mental illness first? Do you deal with the post-traumatic stress first? They were only equipped to deal with the drugs. And once you took the drugs away, I had all this trauma. right? So what happened for me is I hadn't cut myself in years in my childhood. When I got into drugs, I quit cutting. So cutting was my demon, but drugs were my God. I sit in a room with a 17-year-old who got busted smoking marijuana at cheerleading camp and her mommy and daddy sent her treatment. Right. A woman who had 7 children and was addicted to prescription Xanax. I'm a mama today. If I had 7 little ones, I might be tempted to be addicted to prescription Xanax. So God love you if you can do that, and it's okay. I'm not that person. God gives us all different gifts and skills. And a woman who got busted drinking at her job, and if she didn't go to treatment, she was going to lose her 401k in retirement. And then you had me. And I'm supposed to bond and process. All I could do is scratch my head. Not because I had bugs either. Thank you. So what happened was I went in to take a shower, my 5th day in treatment, and I looked in the mirror, and all I could see was all this guilt and shame, and all I could feel was all this pain and hurt. I went in my room, and I cut up a razor, and I started cutting, and I said, I'd rather be high than do this to myself. And I went back out for another 10 years. I sat on these church steps and prayed for death. And when I prayed for death and it never found me, I'm going to tell you a much, much more hopeless place to be is at a place that you're not worthy of death when you ain't got no hope. I decided that this merciful God that I'd heard bits and pieces about, that I was too terrible and I wasn't going to get my out. And then a man pulled up and picked me up. Broad daylight. And he beat me and he raped me. And he pulled a gun and told me to get on my knees and beg for my life, and I could not do it. I had no fear. I thought this God was showing up and saving me. But when I didn't beg for my life, I ticked him off because he didn't have any power. So then he decided he was going to rape me again. I had an opportunity to get the gun, and I told this man to get on his knees, and I told him to beg for his life. And he cried like a baby. He told me he had a family. He told me he had a wife. He had kids. He had a job. He was valuable. He was so valuable, I should spare him. He didn't treat me like I was very valuable, did he? I didn't have the courage to pull the trigger. I think that was a God thing. I sure wouldn't be here now. I emptied the gun into the ground. I wiped the blood from my face. I grabbed my clothes and I took off. I went to the hood. I got high, and shortly after that, I got arrested, and it started a sequence of events that would get me out of the life. A whole lot of other things happened there, but you can buy the book, learn more, because I want to leave you with a few things. Okay, y'all get the gist of it. We are commanded to love God and love people, and that doesn't mean just the people that look like us, walk with us, and hang out in places that we hang. Right? Jesus, he took care of the human needs and gave a spiritual message. Because if you ain't eating days, or if you're dealing with extreme trauma, or if you're just so far gone in your brokenness, you ain't gonna hear that Christian, let me take you to Jesus. We have to take care of the human needs and express that through unconditional love. And with that, we are sharing Jesus. And we will get those opportunities. It takes a little longer, But we have to look at the humanity of the individuals when they're hungry and haven't eaten and all they can think about is they're hungry. They're not hearing you. We need to think about that. I'm a Jesus loving, Bible thumping Christian, so y'all don't think I ain't, because I am. And I love every opportunity I get to share about God's grace and mercy in my life. And I love every time I get to walk with somebody as they find and accept Jesus Christ into their heart. I want to share with you guys that what you do unto me, to the least of these, you do unto me. So when we do this stuff to the other folks, we're doing it to Jesus. We're hurting him. And we have to remember that. Faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. You know, prayer is really awesome. It's really nifty. Writing checks, that's really great. But if you walk out of the room this weekend and you do nothing, is that really doing what we're called to do? To be the hands and feet of Jesus? You know, there's an old Fabergé commercial. Oh my gosh, I'm giving away how old I am, back in the 70s. The thing was, the gal would be in the shower doing her hair with this Fabergé shampoo, and it smelled so great, and it made her hair feel so wonderful. She'd be washing her shower, and she'd go out and her friends would say, "Wow, your hair looks amazing." And the premise of that was she would tell her friend would tell her friend, and it would just continue like wildfire. I encourage you to go out of these rooms at the end of this conference and go tell people, invite people to come to places and learn about this. Another thing I want to leave you with, we all want to care about the children, and that's really awesome. I care about children too, but we have to equally care about the adults. Because oftentimes what we find when we ask the right questions is that adult prostituted persons, 91% of the time, were trafficked or sexually abused as minors, and nobody identified them. We need to look differently at the adults, okay? I encourage that. I challenge that. I challenge you to hold on to the numbers I talked about, the buyers. I challenge you to hold on that adult prostituted persons oftentimes were child sex trafficking victims that nobody identified. Where's their justice? I probably have a whole lot more to say because I can just talk. But I want to leave y'all with thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And I challenge you that when you leave this, to prayerfully ask God, what action do you want me to take with this information I'm learning? Because we have to do something. It's gone on long enough. And morally, we've evolved as a species that we're willing to admit that we have done this. So now it's time to stop it. I have a dream. Is that Martin Luther King had a dream? Martin Luther King had a dream. I have a dream, and I promise this is it. I have a dream. And my dream is that no man, no boy, no woman, no girl will die at the hands of a buyer of sex or a sex trafficker in my lifetime. I have a dream that in my lifetime that we will stop buying human beings and exploiting the vulnerable of our world. I have a dream. And I want to invite y'all to share that dream with me. Thank you.